Minister Scott Morrison has arrived in Washington, declaring America is Australia's most important ally and strategic partner. Mr Morrison flew into Andrews Air Base ahead of his meeting in the Oval Office with President Trump. More from Sky News host Laura Jays, who's travelling with the PM.
Nothing says welcome to America quite like a guard of honour and a trumpet fanfare, and this is the first of many red carpets that will be rolled out for the Prime Minister Scott Morrison and his travelling contingent over the next couple of days. Stepping off Shark One, the Prime Minister and Jenny Morrison were greeted by the US Ambassador Culverhouse and the Assistant Secretary of State. A one-on-one with President Trump in the Oval Office, extended bilateral meetings with the Vice President, the Secretary of State, Treasury Secretary and the Defence Secretary, and, of course, a state dinner at the White House, an occasion only one other world leader has been afforded during the Trump administration. It speaks to the strength of our alliance with a view to do more, and it's no mistake that Scott Morrison comes here describing the US as the most important ally and strategic partner.
It is a great honour and privilege for Jenny and I and our delegation to come here at the very gracious invitation of President Trump and Mrs Trump to do something very important. Firstly, to honour and celebrate 100 years of mateship.
The Prime Minister comes to Washington telling America that Australia is not a bystander, reminding President Trump our defence budget is returning to 2% of GDP and America enjoys a trade surplus with Australia since he came to office.
There are many larger, I suppose more powerful friends that America has, but they know they do not have a more sure and steadfast friend than Australia.
China will be the elephant in the room during these meetings as the trade war persists, and Australia looks for support to maintain our influence in the Pacific. It's also about the Aussies that have made it big in America, from DC to New York, with Ohio and Chicago in between. Laura Jays, Sky News, Washington.
And it will be a who's who of the Australian business and sporting world when the Prime Minister attends the state dinner with President Trump at the White House. It's the first state dinner for an Australian PM in 13 years and only the second for the Trump administration.
The White House is the most public of private residence, and it will play host to the Prime Minister Scott Morrison and 500 invited guests. A state dinner is what the White House considers to be the grandest of grand gestures for a visiting leader. They are rare, they take months of planning, and the term military precision isn't quite a cliche in this case. Business leaders Andrew Forrest, Andrew Liveris, Rupert and Lachlan Murdoch, along with Anthony Pratt, will mingle with Australian sportsmen, Will Power and Greg Norman, just to name a few. Now, the First Lady has chosen a golden and green theme. This inspired by the humble wattle flower. Golden bowls filled with yellow and white roses will signify our long-standing friendship, and champagne grapes highlighting the richness of each country's wine industry. It will not be an alcohol-fuelled affair. President Trump doesn't drink. This is more about a public display of who does and doesn't matter in the unwritten rules of diplomacy. And in the eyes of America, not all world leaders were created equal. Laura Jays, Sky News at the White House.